Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for the 1973 film The Crazies. It's a George A. Romero film, and I'm not going to go over everything that George A. Romero's made or even a few instances. We know George A. Romero. What I am going to say about his other films in comparison to this one is this feels a lot like his other ones. It's not zombies, but it feels kind of like zombies. It is still a pathogen that does things to people, makes them very violent and want to kill people, which is very similar to zombies. So it's a zombie pandemic. Well, not quite at the pandemic scale, but you get the idea. But by the end of the film, it's going to become a pandemic. But it has that same feel as, the Night of the Living Dead, all that type of stuff. Dawn of the Dead, yes. So yeah, it feels very Romero for that reason. Getting into it, written by Romero and based on a script by Paul McCollough, who also wrote the script for Horror Rock. Don't know that one. A lot of the locals, a lot of the characters in the film were locals for like the non-important acting roles, that is. And most of the white-suited soldiers in this were actually high school students, which, A, cheap. I'm sure they really didn't even pay them anything. B, makes sense for the roles because they're supposed to be, young, not knowing a whole lot about what's going on. They're just following orders. Makes sense. So that fits the bill. Kept it cheap, I'm sure. Now getting into the film. Obviously, Billy coming out of the basement like a zombie in the beginning of the film, where he's taunting his younger sister, is a nod to Night of the Living Dead, like the basement where the child zombie was. So I like that kind of nod so early on in the film. What I didn't see coming was the fact that they were going to kill kids this early in the film. I mean, it's a big thing to kill kids in a horror film in the first place. But then on top of that, to like kill kids so early on in the film is like shocking. It's like, okay. But it sets the tone. It gives you an idea that basically no one is safe, nothing is sacred. Everyone is on the table as far as potentially dying, and it just makes the situation feel so dire. No one will be spared, basically, is what it kind of lays out. And it's even more disturbing and messed up in the beginning with the kids, eventually dying because the father is the one who obviously infects them and kills the mother and sets the whole house on fire. By the way, his acting kind of funny, in my opinion, when he was, cuffed up in the police car and he's like yelling about all the things in the house and stuff like that as it's on fire. Yeah, setting up the character of Judy is pregnant to create extra impact when she's in danger. Yeah, very early on, they throw the whole pregnancy thing into there. I'm not big on that in films. I think it's kind of overused, but I do consider the fact that this was made in '73, and it wasn't something that was as much of a cliche back then. If you're making a film now and you're using that to kind of create extra danger for a character, that's a problem. But this is from '73. It's fine. Not a fan of it though. But that's the whole point of it. It's supposed to like up the stakes because it's not just Judy trying to stay safe for herself. It's Judy trying to stay safe for herself and her unborn child. And it's not just David trying to keep himself and Judy alive. It's him trying to do that plus for the unborn child. The scale of what's coming immediately feels really big in this film because of all the military personnel that ends up mobilizing. And they move kind of quickly with this stuff. They're just showing them mobilizing quickly, mobilizing on a large scale. And the film just kind of, I mean, pacing wise, it's great. It just like hits the ground running and just goes, 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 goes. It's like an hour and 42 minutes with the credits. And it doesn't feel that long, to be honest, because it just keeps moving. There's a lot of action. There's a lot of stuff going on. Even when there's not action going on, there's not a whole lot of just like fluff dialogue happening. They really did a good job of kind of tightening the script up for that reason. It's dialogue that has to do with the underlying story, the backstory of, what's going on with Trixie, the pathogen that's at play here, and what are people planning on doing? What are people thinking? Like, it's all stuff that's actually important. A lot of films, when they're not having the action sequences, they're kind of throwing fluff in there, dialogue-wise. And it's very impressive that they don't do that with this film, which is one of the major reasons that it has such great pacing to it. And I'm impressed. Talking about nuking the entire town of Evans City within less than 20 minutes into the film is pretty crazy. That's what made me really realize how fast this film was moving. Because usually the idea of nuking the entire town doesn't come until the end of the film, or even, maybe even halfway, but never less than 20 minutes into a hour and 42-minute film. I mean, that's something. It just makes you feel like you're getting whiplash to a degree. Like, things are happening so fast, things are getting bigger and bigger. Like, the idea of how dire things are becoming so quickly is just like overwhelming to a degree to the viewer. And it's good because it makes you feel overwhelmed, like people in this situation would be feeling. The other thing that's helpful with the story is the fact that they don't start it at the beginning. They start it already 6 days into the pathogen being on the loose. So it's already in like a problem state instead of, seeing everything just like, oh, this is normal life. And then slowly things start to happen. It's kind of just like jumping right into the fire, which makes it feel crazier, which helps with the pacing. I like it. I like the idea. If you think from the citizen perspective, they really have no idea who these people rounding them up are, and that is scary to think about. If you really place yourself in the situation of these citizens within Evans City, just think about it. Like, these people just barging into your house, going through your things. I don't know. They're not supposed to be doing that, I don't think. That was an extra kind of terrible thing going on. But at gunpoint, just being like, you need to come with us. Like, at no point were these people actually talking to any of the people. They're just holding them up at gunpoint and saying, you're coming with us, and just rounding them up and taking them to this school. They're not trying to like tell them what's going on. I understand there's like an urgency to it, but you can kind of tell people and then they'd be less likely to resist potentially, unless they're infected with Trixie. And then in that case, I mean, they're probably going to resist no matter what. So I don't know if it's a situation where they were just de facto assuming that everyone they were coming across was probably going to have Trixie. So they would approach everyone as if they were potentially dangerous. I guess that's what's at play. But when you first show up, you could at least try to talk to them a little bit. Just saying. The police officer accidentally getting shot shows how the stress and confusion of the situation leads to collateral damage. It really does a good job of just exemplifying the craziness, because it's something that very accidentally happens because of all the confusion going on, because people are trying to go in different directions and deal with it in different ways. You have the military personnel who are in charge, and then you have the local police who are like, oh, we want to handle this our way. And then there's a little bit of a scuffle, and accidentally someone gets shot. So it gives you a good feeling of the craziness and confusion that's going on. And it also shows you that they don't, like, the police and the military personnel don't have it all together. Like, they don't have a great plan necessarily. The old lady stabbing the soldier with a knitting needle gleefully is a pretty chilling moment. It's a fun moment in the film. It's a good death. But it's a pretty chilling moment if you really think about it, because she was so happy stabbing that person with that knitting needle. Plus the fact that, she's an old woman knitting. Nobody suspects that she's a problem. I guess maybe this is why they treat everyone as potentially hostile, because Granny can't keep her needle to herself. Yeah, it's a good scene. I really like that scene. It's kind of like something you don't expect, obviously, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was well done. The reveal that Trixie has already been loose for 6 days makes the viewer believe efforts to contain the outbreak are basically useless from the get-go. From the get-go of what you're seeing. They're coming in already 6 days in, and they really, there's even some dialogue that throws it out there, like, they don't know how far it's gone. They don't know how many people are infected at this point, and I think at some point someone even says that it's probably already past Evans City. So it gives the viewer, with that information, the idea that it's kind of like they're throwing up their hands. They're like, what do you even do at this point? Like, can you even get this under control? Are their plans even close to being able to work? Probably not. I like how they never try to talk to the citizens of Evans City. They just bust in and try to round them up, then act like they're not prepared when people revolt. Yeah, that's another thing, is they should be prepared for people to actually revolt against them if they're not saying anything to them. On top of knowing that this pathogen makes people violent. So it does seem like these soldiers are particularly terrible fodder. They're like red shirts in Star Trek, where, they're just there to die, basically. Because a lot of times when they're in any sort of like fighting situation, any scuffle, it seems like they're kind of like slowly walking towards the bullets or whatever people are using. At one point, someone's using like a pitchfork, but it just seems like they're just waiting to die, basically, which, a lot of films ended up being kind of like that back in the day. So the acting isn't the greatest, in my opinion, but still fun. It's pretty messed up when they show the soldiers taking personal belongings, because here you have them rounding people up in the first place and not doing it in a very compassionate way. Then on top of that, you show that they're not very scrupulous individuals because they're literally rifling through people's things and stealing. So then you're just like, oh, okay, so this is a bad situation, and now it's like slightly worse too. It's pretty nuts when the citizens are openly fighting the soldiers, even throwing dynamite, which I don't know where they got that. Is this person a prospector? I don't know. Pause for horror hydration. But I think as far as craziness goes, that might be my favorite scene, where they're kind of in that open field and it's like all these white suited soldiers going this way and all these citizens coming this way with their weapons, and they're just going at it, killing each other. It's nuts. It's chaotic. It's the craziness of war, and it totally feels that way. It's captured well. David and Clank's ambush of the house with soldiers in it is pretty solid. And they end up being successful because of the information that was dropped a little bit earlier that David was a Green Beret. When they drop that little bit of information, that just signals to the viewer, this guy knows how to deal with this situation. Most likely, he's going to be fine. He's going to make it, which obviously he does end up making at the end. But unfortunately, he wasn't able to save his wife and wife's baby. Well, his baby as well. But yeah, but the little Green Beret thing just signals this guy can fight. This guy can get through this situation. It gives you hope, at least for that particular character. Kathy and Artie end up being kind of useless characters and kind of annoying characters, in my opinion, until they actually, are taken over by the pathogen and then become violent, and then they have like a purpose, kind of. But prior to that, like, you kind of wonder why David and Clank are even keeping them around, because they A, don't really seem that amenable to actually getting help from them, and B, just are weird. Like, there were, especially Kathy. I think maybe that's supposed to be like the signs of the early onset of Trixie with her. And then things just obviously get worse, and things with Artie get worse, and then the incest happens too, and that's just like weird, very weird, uncomfortable. And then it also makes you wonder, like, is this just a thing that that the Trixie has made happen, or was this going on before? Because it kind of seems like this didn't come out of nowhere and it's driven only by the Trixie, because we don't see other people in the film having incestuous relationships because of Trixie. We just see them getting violent. That's what we know of it. So that's just when they show the higher ups talking about talking and coordinating things. Sorry, they're always eating and kicking back in chairs, very comfortable. This just shows how comfortable and disconnected they are from what's actually happening in Evans City, which I think is kind of a comment on the fact that the people a lot of the times calling shots with terrible situations like this aren't close to what's going on, so the decisions they make aren't felt as much by them. There's no like real dangerous impact to them in that situation. Like, and it's shown very well by the fact that they're always just munching on some food, kicking back, hanging out, being comfortable. I think it does a good job of kind of bringing home that point. Already talked about the incest stuff. Crazy. Any scene with Kathy in it is weird. She's just a weird, blank-faced character. I need to repeat that. She is probably what I hated most about this film, to be honest. Hate that character. I wish she was... I don't know if it was an acting choice that she happened to make and Romero was fine with it. I don't know if Romero asked for that particular type of performance, but it just doesn't work in the film. It's annoying. She's annoying. skeeved me out just to look at her. Because she's just like this blank-faced character for a lot of the time, just totally spaced out. Like, I get that's probably the Trixie doing that to her, but I don't know. I just don't like her in this film. Clank really takes it to the soldiers when he volunteers to be a decoy so that David and Judy can get away. Good on him. He realizes that, and it's kind of sad, sad for the viewers, because I like the character of Clank. He was one of the more actually developed characters who you're endeared to, but he sees the signs that he's probably infected. He comments on them numerous times, and then he's just like, you know what? I'm going to go down in a blaze of glory. I'm going to do this solid for David and Judy. And he does. And he kills a lot of the soldiers. What I didn't see coming was when Clank ends up getting shot in the side of the head by that one soldier you did not see until the shot actually rings out. Which, by the way, the head wound and the blood kind of leaking out was good. They did a good job with that. It looked very realistic. It had a lot of impact. It had great impact to it. Pause for horror hydration. Man, it just makes my throat real dry talking like this. But yeah, really like that scene. Felt kind of sad that Clank was gone. And with the death of Dr. Watts, you feel any possibility of solving the problem is basically gone here. Especially since he didn't tell his assistant what he had found before he ran out and blended in with the Crazies. And that's literally what happened. Like, he was in kind of like a panicked, excitable state, and the soldiers just viewed him as another one of the Crazies, which they actually say in the film. They call people the Crazies, which I don't know about you, but I'm always that person who's just like, oh, they said the title of the film. So they did. But yeah, you can see why they thought that he was just one of the Crazies, and it really comes across to the viewer as that was the hope for something to get taken care of here, and it's dashed, really, at that point. The other moment is when, I'm assuming it wasn't like 100%, when they were asking if David, once they bring him in, should actually be tested to see if he's immune, and he kind of gets like poo-pooed, and then you're just like, no, like, he is immune, because we as viewers have never seen any signs of him being impacted by the Trixie, and they're just gonna not do it. So you're just like, oh my gosh, tough. Anyway, when Judy starts laughing when she's behind the cinder blocks, you know she's infected at that point, because that's what Kathy started doing much earlier, when she was really, I guess you could say, in the later stages of her infection. So yeah, oop, I lost my, yeah. Peckham doesn't seem enthused about handling another one of these situations in another town. He literally gets called to be like, okay, glad you took care of that one. Here's another town where we're having this similar problem. And he's just like, don't want to do this. I don't blame him. I really do not blame him. Do you? Probably not. He was a good character, by the way. Very interesting character. Very well acted, in my opinion. Obviously, David is the immune person they've been looking for, but because he resisted, they end up assuming that he may be infected, so they don't go to any trouble. Hope's dashed. Between that and what went down with Dr. Watts, terrible. The score in this film is actually kind of odd and kind of changes a little bit quickly, in my opinion. I specifically dislike all the use of kind of like the military marching drums that just keep coming back up. Just don't like it. You know, I understand that scores have gotten a lot better over time, for the most part. Not with, you know, every single film, but yeah, the score just really didn't work for me in this film. I don't know about anyone else. If you have a differing opinion, you can let me know. Feel free. And the film does feel choppy because there are a lot of really quick cuts, which actually also makes it feel frantic, which I'm kind of two minds of that. Like, making it feel frantic is kind of like a good thing, because that kind of increases like the craziness, but making it feel frantic also kind of like messes up the enjoyment of the film at the same time, because there are a lot of kind of like quick aggressive cuts in the film that are just rough, in my opinion, and that's one of the things I really don't like about the film. But overall, obviously, I did like the film. This is an interesting kind of apocalyptic film by Romero once again. Out of 5 stars with half stars in play, I'm going to give it a very solid 3.5-star rating. But I would love to hear your opinions on it. Go ahead and put it in the comments. Um, Also, do me a quick favor, hit subscribe if you haven't to my channel. I appreciate that. It is quick, painless, costs you nothing, and it really keeps me motivated to keep doing this. I appreciate it. Also, hit the notification bell button because then you'll know when I'm putting up new videos, which at this point I'm doing for a week, which I think is a good amount. But regardless, I really thank you for checking out this particular video. I appreciate your time. And until next time, keep it brutal.